Can I encourage you to sit down, please, to take your seats? So thank you so much for coming. We are so grateful that you have given us this space at the end of the day. Probably you had a very long day, and since this subject is so important, you decided to stay. So we really thank you. I'm Kawinzi Muiu. I'm Director of Gender at World Food Program, and I'll be your moderator this evening. We are going to manage time so well, so I want you to stay so that at the end you can ask a question. Before we proceed, I want to acknowledge the privilege of having the Vice Prime Minister of Kyrgyzstan who has joined us here. We are really happy she has joined us. We are honored to have her here, and I understand we have the, one of the councillors for the Council of Italy with us, so I acknowledge you also. And then I want to acknowledge all the young people who are in the room, because they are the future and they are going to carry this forward. So please join me carrying all the young people in the room. Yes? So since I've said no wasting time, I'm going to go straight. Okay, so let me say, I think you have all been given the bios of everybody. So, yeah, so please have a look so we can save some time for questions. But without ado, I'll give the floor to Alia.
Good afternoon, good evening, excellencies, distinguished delegates, esteemed colleagues, and dear participants. It is indeed a great pleasure to welcome you all to this CSW63 side event on celebrating rural women's empowerment. And I want to start by sharing with you stories of different women living thousands of miles apart, yet somehow connected to each other and to all of us gathered here today. Tedelek is a 38-year-old widowed mother of 7 in Ethiopia, who had long struggled with the social and economic burdens of widowhood, but is now not only food secure, but able to access finance and diversify her income through a small business. Zamira is a 42-year-old woman in Kyrgyzstan, who, if she was with us here today, would tell you about how she shaped her country's social insurance and pension law to protect women's rights, and how she became an elected member of her local council. Marie is a 38-year-old mother of 4, and she would also tell you about the leadership skills that she gained over the past 4 years, which helped her to lead a farming group in Liberia and to inspire other women to become entrepreneurs. These achievements have been made possible by the joint program on accelerating progress towards the economic empowerment of rural women. This is a joint program that my organization, UN Women, implements together with FAO, IFAd, and WFP. It's a pioneer initiative, developed on the basis that only a holistic and integrated approach that builds on the comparative advantages of different UN agencies could bring about a sustainable change in the lives of rural women. It supports UN reform in demonstrating the impact of scale and ambition that is requisite for achieving the 2030 Agenda and the Sustainable Development Goals. As the stories of these women I've talked about show us, this joint program is designed to enhance women's self-confidence and increase their business management skills. Through this program, gender equality is leveraged to bring about direct benefit to women, but also to their families and the communities that they live in, whether it is through improved access to nutritious food, health insurance, or children's education. Similar stories are being told by the over 51,000 rural women engaged through this program. Today, we have the opportunity to hear about how, since its launch in late 2014, this joint program has achieved impressive results. we will also have the opportunity to discuss ways in which these experiences can be amplified and shared with others. Dear participants, without the support of our partners, this would not have been possible. So I thank the governments of Ethiopia, Guatemala, Kyrgyzstan, Liberia, Nepal, Niger, and Rwanda for their continued collaboration. We would also like to express our gratitude to the many non-state actors that engage with us in pursuit of a paradigm shift in the way that development and humanitarian aid can foster gender-responsive and sustainable rural development. I am particularly honored and happy to have with us today representatives of the governments of Sweden and Norway, which have generously contributed to this program. And on behalf of FAO, IFAd, WFP, and UN Women, and indeed the more than 200,000 people that this program reaches, I would like to offer our sincerest appreciation. We count on you to continue to work with us to scale up this important initiative. We still need your help as the biggest advocates for this program. We also hope that through this event, we can bring on board new partners and champions. I am very much looking forward to the presentations and to the discussions today, and thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you so much for that warm introduction. So Kyrgyzstan became the first country to have the program evaluated. So we want Dinara to tell us what were the key findings from this evaluation and what are the main results which have been achieved in your country. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dear ladies and gentlemen, distinguished panelists, I'm very honored and proud to present today the joint program on accelerating progress towards economic empowerment of rural women. As you know, the program is implemented jointly by 4 agencies, and the donors are Norway and Sweden. Today I will brief you on the Kyrgyzstan experience. Next slide, please. Total budget of the, next slide, please. Yeah. The total budget of the program since 2014, when we started the program implementation, is 21.5 million, and Kyrgyzstan have received $3.38 million. This amount we divide among all the agencies based on the technical contribution to the program implementation. In Kyrgyzstan, we worked in 73 villages in 5 provinces out of 7, and in 2019 we have selected 14 new villages to work with. Next slide, please. Through this program, we plan to achieve the following outcomes: improved food security and nutrition security, increased income to sustain livelihoods, enhanced participation in decision-making of rural women, and more gender-responsive policy environment. The program is fully in line with the strategic national priorities. It directly contributes towards the following 4 SDGs and indirectly contributes to 3 additional SDGs. And it is also fully aligned with the United Nations Development Assistance Framework in the country. Next slide, please. So why, this is just for your knowledge, the map of the country. It is a Central Asian landlocked country. We border with China, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and Tajikistan. And the population of the country is 6.2 million. Thank you. Next slide. So why Kyrgyzstan was selected to be the beneficiary of this joint program? When the idea of this joint program was first wandering and discussed among the agencies and the donors some 6 years ago, it was important to address those countries which really needed improvement in the status of rural women and which governments have political commitment to support rural women. So, and why this project was needed for Kyrgyzstan? Here you can see some figures Firstly, in Kyrgyzstan, 66% of people live in rural areas, and 24.4% of population live below the poverty line. The large flow of internal and external migration due to the lack of jobs, especially in rural areas, carries losses for the economy, agriculture, population, and the country as a whole. Women in Kyrgyzstan make up to 40% of labor migrants, that is up to 1 million, according to some figures. Patriarchal norms and lifestyles in Kyrgyzstan strengthen the position of men, not women, in spite of the fact that rural women in Kyrgyzstan, particularly women farmers, are the backbone of family and community agricultural production and food security. Although there are no formal or legal barriers to women's right to own property, cultural and traditional preferences are given to men as heirs and owners of real estate and land. As a result, most women do not own property or own property together with husbands or their families. The lack of full ownership of property infringes on women's rights to use property, for example, selling, renting, or offering property as collateral for loans. And this puts women at risk of poverty and extreme poverty in the case of divorce or other situations when they are abandoned and not supported by the man who owns the property. Next slide, please. So the aspects of selection, Kyrgyzstan was also, among those aspects were also such facts that we had strong presence of all 4 agencies in the country. We have government commitment to support rural women, and we have existence of ongoing initiatives on which agencies can build on. Each agency participating in this program contributes its comparative advantage to the successful program development and implementation. For example, FAO strengthens agricultural skills and subsidizes agricultural commodities. IFAd prioritizes the gender action learning system as a way to accelerate development results. UN Women focuses on social mobilization and fosters political and civic participation of rural women. And WFP builds skills in value chain development and strengthens food security and nutrition. Together, all agencies represent an integrated package aimed at transforming beneficiary households' ability to address poverty and improve nutrition by fostering women economic empowerment. All this leads also to social and political empowerment of rural women and their increased self-confidence. The project implemented a number of capacity-building interventions, such as agronomy and poultry development, management of local household food reserves, post-harvest technologies and agricultural innovations. Revolving funds were established for providing credits to women. Trainings on financial literacy, entrepreneurship skills, business development, and leadership were also provided. An important methodology of GALS, or Gender Action Learning System, was introduced and practically tested. This is a community-led empowerment methodology using specific participatory processes and diagram tools which aims to give women as well as men more control over their lives as the basis for individual, household, community, and organizational development. The so-called self-help groups have been established, which enable beneficiaries to work independently in the field. We believe that those capacity-building activities contributed to accumulating human capital for the improved nutrition and livelihood and increased rural women economic and social empowerment. The program's outcomes as of today. We have covered 3,412 direct beneficiaries plus 700 new beneficiaries we plan in this year. Over 800 women are running small businesses, starting from bakery, agriculture production, planting, and to running bath houses, mini processing houses, and sewing and handicraft houses. And today I wanted to show you the examples of handicrafts which are produced by rural women, and some of them are beneficiaries of our programs. So these are handmade handicrafts, and the dress is also a traditional dress produced by our rural women. 32 women were elected as members of the local councils, which is very important, bearing in mind the local mentality with prevailing patriarchal norms and lifestyle. Share of households with poor or borderline food consumption score reduced by 63%. Agricultural productivity in our beneficiary livelihoods increased from 40 to 70%. As a result of advocacy activities, rural women activists participated in lobbying at national level for legislative initiatives on banning child marriage and introduction of a gender quota in local councils. 2 small cooperatives and 2 regional producer associations accumulated capital of over $100,000. 125 self-help groups with 1,000 members established revolving funds and collected over $21 US up to date. Over 3,000 people developed improved livelihood plans together with their family members, improving human-to-human level relationships. Next slide, please. The final evaluation of this program was conducted between February and April 2018. While we say final evaluation, at those period in 2017 when we planned the evaluation, we didn't know about the extension of the program and we didn't know about the generous contribution of the donors. Therefore, we decided that it's good to have the final evaluation to see the program results and outputs. And the period covered by this evaluation was November 2014, March 2018. Objectives was to assess the program progress and performance from perspectives of relevance, effectiveness, organizational efficiency, and sustainability. Evaluation covered 8 selected project sites in the country, both in its southern and northern parts. Next slide, please. What are the lessons learned? Here I will brief you on the lessons learned not from the program implementation, but from the process of evaluation. The first lesson, which we all agreed, is that the quality results of joint evaluation depend highly on how partnership was built and implemented throughout the whole project cycle, starting from development of terms of reference and selection of evaluators and so on. Second lesson was that we need to ensure that evaluators fully account of all agencies' priorities, mandates, ways of operation, and reflect the results in a full and comprehensive manner. Another lesson learned is that approach towards preparing the management response should not be based on putting only agency-specific actions. And finally, we agreed that the quality assurance mechanism should be ensured to full extent and jointly. Next slide, please. The main purpose of the evaluation was to assess in more details the programmatic progress and performance of interventions from the point of view of their relevance, effectiveness, sustainability, and efficiency. In terms of relevance, focus on engaging women in income-generating activities makes the program highly relevant, according to the evaluators, and they say that the program was highly relevant to national strategic priorities and needs of rural women, and selection of targeted beneficiaries was also highly relevant. In terms of effectiveness, the evaluation says that the program reached targets of most key indicators. But the limitation of the program model is that the most vulnerable women and some disabled women, they were unable to join the program. And participating women lose their leisure time. GALS, the Gender Action Learning System, offsets the latter unintended negative effect, thus increasing the program's positive impact on women empowerment. In terms of sustainability, the program established several mechanisms to ensure sustainability of its results, including creation of village associations of self-help groups and regional producer organizations. An explicit exit strategy could enhance sustainability of the joint program results. As for the efficiency, the evaluation says that relying on shared processes increases efficiency of joint delivery. Combining complementary expertise of partner agencies created synergetic effects for participants and enhanced program efficiency. Based on the findings, the following main recommendations were made. For the next stage of the joint program implementation, the partner UN agencies shall use the operational model that enhances all aspects of rural women economic empowerment as defined by the Women Empowerment in Agriculture Index. In the second phase of the program, goals shall be applied in the second cohort of villages to mitigate the negative programs' impact on women leisure time. In the next phase, the joint program shall continue supporting 4 producer organizations until they are fully self-sustainable. And finally, partner UN agencies shall consider developing and testing the strategy for replicating of women economic empowerment model in the villages where the program has already worked. Next slide. So what we are planning in the second phase of this year, so we will scale up the goals with engagement of established institutions. We will concentrate our efforts and attention on improving targeting and focus on young women, ethnic minorities. We will increase the number of stakeholders and engaged service providers and ensure closer engagement and stronger ownership by state partners at municipal and national levels. Next slide, please. So I would like to finalize my presentation by paying tribute to the rural women, sister agencies, donors, and partners. We all believe that a society of gender equality and zero hunger in our lifetime is possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Dinara. And now we are going to hear from some people who have benefited in Guatemala, what they actually think about this program.
Desde escuela ina kui barkwan di naqxotikla naqxqatikip chaqlik Ángel rikin richutre li programa conjunto kwan chikan uxichap anaj kwan qokik chik Ángelak ut chokuela in usaj kui lik Ángel muko reta rah intzaq bal taraj qare naqxintaw li nale ut re naqxinsolok kui ut kho chirish li qa kuyen kwan xinsolok chi us ut anaj kwan rusilal chokuya kui lain chokuela in li rusilal la anak di barkwan li shin khalsa li khun kabal anak kwan chik ayak li honal renak la inting hilang ayak malahtin tsaqong chi sa honak li chut chik ut chokwa la in chena usi li ka halobal ut renak tinshik chik ayak chik arak chik chi tsaqong chik sa honak li Ángel ut choreb li khun kabal khu chabil chokreb ho keblin ko kal jo ke sol bal chanru roksinkil ut kinesteng khu chanru panukil Ángel lin qawachin nashtia ko nak chabil makarek ut hana kui nashkeli honal re nak tinshik la in chokwela in li barkwan li patsap li sheke ko nak kho karu nashkoshla lin qawachin han sash ol chirish li kan hol bala kui ut nawulak chiru ut nashkeli honal re nak la in tinshik chi tsaqong ut ma ka nak akilal tarah rikin li kan hol bala ana sao chirish ut re nak khwash ten kui an kho an kui nak ke kan halak mas ten ankil jika an chokreah kuya an chokwela ina kuya sa kuya bal kwan susilal chokwela ina blin ko kal jokhe solok nekesh tawi ru chan ru kan halak yokin ut nekesh panah kire ut saya chol ut nakni tikif panukiling Ángel nikin esteng ut saya chol ko kal jokhe sol bal re chan ru yokin la en churue ut tahun kutan hanep chikte panu chokwel in sumingkili patom de yogesh ke barkwel di barkwali nakabanu salika saka kalep alpasan barno ko kalek barno ko au aran nakaw chakli shim ken ik chishuni likonaran hotsin holi utsah utlitul aran ko au chak después nakarini au rishin ochat ni nakwawe liko kwawem barkwali nakatseka saka kon kablal nin kebre lin ko kal chi kaket pas komunil kaketaan barkwan lin nakwaw ut barkwan lin na elan barkwan lin nakwaw rish ti pochat nin kajib ayak chik reb lin kale balah kwi chokwela ini patok di tiogesh keban lin ka ush han nak tin kwa klik chi us holishin sol mukureta tin kanap chi kwar ka wi renak la in tin kwa klik chi mas renak chi kan tin to kakawrisile ka hong kablal sa komunil kinep lin ko kalah kwi to shit manungkil ka angel barkwani choki sol bal mukureta tin ke tarak chi lang ka renak kwak tin kwa klisiah kwi lin hong kablal chi.
Thank you, wonderful. And now we'll move to the panelists. And I start with my first panelist from FAO, Susan. Can you tell us how women empowerment in agriculture index works and some of the key results from Ethiopia? And maybe a few thoughts on why it's important to use both quantitative and qualitative tools to measure empowerment. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening, and thank you very much for coming to join us this evening. We're very happy to see a full room, even at this late hour. Thank you, Kawinzi. As we wait, what I'm going to talk about today is why it's important to use innovative tools if we are going to measure women's empowerment, because we cannot use the same old tools that don't tell the full story. And I'm going to talk about Ethiopia, where we are implementing the JP RUI. And the program is implemented in partnership, just like Kyrgyzstan. It's implemented in partnership with the three Rome-based agencies, UN Women and the government machinery. And it operates in two regions, Oromia and Afar, has an integrated package of interventions that look very different, but still it's integrated. It has activities related to access to finance, capacity development of farmers, capacity development of the government staff at district level. The capacity development of farmers is on entrepreneurship, financial literacy, household food reserves, nutrition, but also to address sociocultural or discriminatory sociocultural norms. They have a program called Community Conversations, where they have difficult conversations with the entire community. And working at policy level, they've established a gender network where all these issues are discussed. So let's go to the... So Kawinzi asked me to talk about the Women's Empowerment in Agriculture Index. This is how it looks. It measures women's empowerment in 5 major areas, and it measures women's empowerment relative to the man in the same household. It focuses on 5 major areas. So there's production, resources, income, leadership, and time. But the big issue is measuring women's decision-making in this area. So it's input into decisions of what to plant, where to plant, decisions on how income is used, or control over income, issues, group membership, workload. So these are the main areas. And the tool really focuses a lot on the questions are asked of both the man and the woman, primary male and primary woman in the same household, so that you can compare them. And this also allows us to capture gender dynamics in the households. In addition to this, it's important to also mention that once the index is calculated, where you can also calculate an index where you compare the man and the woman in the same house to see their level of empowerment or disempowerment. Next slide. So what happened? So the WIA was developed in 2012 by USAID, the International Food Policy Research Institute, and the Oxford Poverty and Human Development Initiative. The Oxford Poverty and Human Development Initiative is the one that usually puts out the Human Development Index. So the idea was to apply these same techniques to measure women's empowerment. And it was meant to be used by USAID's Feed the Future programs. But what has happened now is in 2014, IFPRI decided to try and adapt the Women's Empowerment in Agriculture Index so that it could measure the impacts of projects. And they invited 13 programs globally that are programs that are focusing on women's empowerment to take part in this. It's a piloting, but to develop the tool. And so the JP Rui in Ethiopia is participating in that. And the first thing we did was to look at the domains I just showed you and to say, are these what we want to measure? Is there anything missing? And we came up with, from all these programs, there were issues that we thought needed to be added. Access to information, for example, was important. Access to and decisions on credit. Access to a financial account. Do they have a bank account? And then interesting things, intra-household relationships, mutual respect, attitudes towards domestic violence, or even individual confidence, self-efficacy, how satisfied is the woman. So all these other things became really important. And for that reason, one of the issues that came up is, of course, you can quantify some of this, but you get much deeper and better information if you link that with a qualitative assessment. So the end result is a tool called the project level WIA that uses both qualitative and quantitative tools. And the qualitative tools really help to validate and contextualize. And I will share with you some of the results that came out from there. But also, they helped us to understand the route or the path to disempowerment or the path to empowerment, so taking life stories of beneficiaries. And then, of course, the last part is on nutrition, input into reproductive health decisions or into nutrition. Next slide, please. So what I'm going to share with you is a mix of the results from both the quantitative and qualitative, just to show you how you can link the two. Next slide. So, and because of time, I only cover a few parts of the results because I was given very strict time limits. So I'll talk about livelihood diversification and control over income. And the first thing that came out, and this came out both in the quantitative and qualitative, is that women tended to have more control and decision-making power over the income that they earned from the activities that they themselves were managing. So poultry, dairy was milk, or local brews, and so they were able to control that. But in the qualitative discussions, what came out is if the money is a lot, then they lose that autonomy over decision-making. So they said, women have autonomy over smaller amounts of money. So it's fine so long as it's little and they lose the control. And this was a huge discussion, and we kept saying how much, what is a little money? But anyway. And then the other thing that was really important is that we found is that women in the UN Joint Program have increasingly diversified their income sources. And during the qualitative, it was very clear that participating in income-generating activities was an important dimension of empowerment, and they all said that. And it was very nice to see that women had more control over the credit, which actually comes in their names. And one of the things that came out was very many women didn't have bank accounts. So this, again, is information for the project in order to address the changes that they need to improve the project. Next slide. The other aspect that we think is really important and can be a huge disempowerment for women is time, women's time use. And so very clear, women spend significantly more time in work activities than men. And of the people we interviewed in the communities, only 57% of the women reported working less than 10.5 hours, while 73% of the men were very clear they work less than 10.5 hours a day. So very clear. The other thing that the WIA helps us to capture is how many. So we always say childcare, and people imagine that a woman is holding a baby and she's doing childcare. No. these women have a baby on their back and they are digging or they are cooking. So it was able to capture how many hours women spend taking care of children while doing something else, cooking, cleaning, or trading. So very useful information. Mobility was a huge issue when we looked at the quantitative results. They showed no differences between men and women, but the qualitative results said no, mobility is an issue. Men don't want women to leave their homes. Mobility was an issue. We needed to be taking account of which places were visited, how far away they were. Women who are married have different abilities, etc. Last slide one more last slide. And just before I finish, I just wanted to share what the qualitative does for this study. And for example, we went to the community and we said, what is empowerment? There was no clear definition of what empowerment is. And after long discussions, it came up that, it has, no one word can describe it. It can mean Chimina, one who is able or strong, or Gahumza, one who has capability. So this really helps us to contextualize and allow us to be able to understand empowerment very much from their perspective. So in closing, I wanted to say that it's really important to underscore the importance of using different tools, asking different questions when you want to measure women's empowerment. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Susan. Before we proceed, I really want to give a big shout out for all the people who are watching us through UN Web TV. We are very grateful that you are tuned in, and stay with us. Now I'll move on to IFAd and Ndaya. If you can tell us why household methodologies are important in IFAD for promoting development and also promoting gender equality. Over to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, again, thank you for this opportunity. So for those who do not know IFAD, so IFAD is a UN agency, but it's also an IFI. So it has a dual identity with a strong commitment to gender equality and women's empowerment. So what IFAD brings to the partnership with the UN Women World Food Programme and FAO, it is with this investment in the field as well as its approach to gender equality and women's empowerment. So when we talk about the discourse on food security and nutrition, it is a no-brainer that we have to reach women. So we said that women are at the center of those issues. So in terms of reaching, we are doing relatively well, and IFAD, like others, is reaching the women. So within our own program, now we reach 50% of the women. So it's success. So in terms of quantitative numbers, we are making progress. But when we were looking at qualitatively, we realized that there was a lot of room for improvement. As was mentioned by Susan before, so entering in a community and making investments, in some instances, women would lose power over some of the income that they would generate through the activities. Or in other circumstances, once the land becomes productive, that asset is retrieved and she no longer have access to the land. So then within IFAD, there was a recognition that some dialogue has to take place within the household to really understand how this is taking place and make sure that once the women are empowered, they remain empowered. So one of the approach that we use within the toolkit, if you will, of the household methodologies is the gender action learning system. And that is a participatory approach going into the household for a couple of things. One is because it accelerates the impact of the project. As you know, within the joint program, it's a relatively short program. So if we want the program to actually reach this ambitious target, then we have to work quickly and then make sure that whatever we do actually sticks in the field. That's number one. Number two, we are working with very poor households. So it's important to recognize that they are human beings, that they also have visions, and they should be empowered. So for those participant households, for them to be able to articulate what they want to do for their lives and then to realize that they can actually do things with limited resources, it's very empowering. So they realize that with their own skill set that they have, there are ways or pathways out of poverty. So it's really a message of hope. So, and then the third thing is that also it enables to bring men into the conversation. So when we talk about changing gender dynamics within the household, so it's important to not just limit the discussion with women, but also to bring everyone within the households. And so with that, the challenge is now is by using that approach that we call as transformative, because it goes beyond just the surface and address the root causes of gender inequality, by looking at some of the social norms as well as some cultural barriers. So that approach has the task to actually change or challenge the different gender roles, as well as breaking some of the stereotypes. So in the context of the GPRE, so what we did, as we mentioned in Kyrgyzstan, was to work together, and then some of the results were very telling, as mentioned by our colleague, because there it is one of the first time that it was done, that an evaluation was done over a period of 3 years, looking at the impact. And then it was very clear, comparing the two different groups of households, that the households that actually benefited from the GAL's approach had very, very strong results. So measuring the 10 different dimensions, and I'm going to take a moment to read them here to you. So there are 4 dimensions here, 4 indicators that were significantly higher for those households that benefited from the GAL support. The first one is increased participation in productive decisions. The second one is more social contacts with the self-help groups. That's not surprising. And the third one, increased confidence in speaking in public, and then getting basic leadership skills. So along those 4 indicators, it was very clear that the household that had benefited from the GAL support had stronger results than those households that did not. Then there are a number of indicators for which no results were shown for the second cohort. And I'm going to list them to you. Increased decision-making power over income use. So there, for the household that benefited, the women retain control over the income. And that's important because we saw, for instance, in the case of Ethiopia, that for a small amount of money, the woman would retain control. But once the money becomes important, she loses it. But in this case, in the case of Kyrgyzstan, the women continued to retain control over the income, which was significant, by the way. You know, and as you can see, they were making some beautiful crafts, selling for good money. So another one were becoming community leaders. So women that had participated into the GAL's training were able now to become community leaders, to empower other women to become leaders, and then to even influence some of the local laws within the communities. There are 3, increased status in the family. What I did not know is that in Kyrgyzstan, I believe mother-in-laws are very powerful. So you have different generations within the households. So now the household where the GAL's training were participated, that dialogue changed. And then the woman had an improved status within the household and was able to make some decision that she was not able to make before. Then more equal distribution of domestic tasks, and that is linked to one of the negative impacts of this when women actually have the opportunity to participate to productive activities and income. To the extent that women are also responsible for many of the unproductive or non-remunerated activities, the question is how do we distribute that within the household? But then within the household where men, mother-in-laws participating into the GAL's training, there was a redistribution of the task whereby women could continue to work, earn more money. It's not that she did not have the opportunity to do so, but there was less loss of time compared to the household that did not participate into the GAL's training. And then, of course, they also had more time for themselves, because sometimes we limit the woman, say she has to work, she has to do this, but how about just doing nothing, right? And then just enjoying life. So they were able to do so. So this is just an example to show that the use of the GAL is very powerful because it empowers people beyond economic empowerment. It creates discussion within the household, and actually the results are also more powerful. And I'll leave it at that.
Thank you so much, Ndaya. And now we move forward. We move next to Sweden. And Sweden has been one of our donors for this project since 2014. They have really, really been very committed. So, Eva, maybe you can tell us why have you bothered to invest in this project? Why have you kept with us for so many years? Yeah, and then maybe you can tell us a bit the role of inflation and evaluation. Why is this project so important to Sweden? Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you very much also for inviting Sweden and Sida and myself to take part here. And I'm delighted to be here in this audience, and also to learn about the results and the showcases that have been presented. I think a few years ago, the Swedish government adopted a feminist foreign policy. I'm sure some of you know about that. And Sida has really put gender equality for many, many years in the forefront of all the work that we do. And we integrate it in all the work that we do. And Sida has been, since the inception of this program, I believe it was in 2014, right? We have really found it groundbreaking and innovative. I think the innovation and the willingness to learn and to adapt the program as we move along. And I think we've heard today also on the results, the willingness and I think the eagerness to not just to monitor the program, but really to monitor it and follow it and adapt it in a very participatory way. And I think that's very important in terms of really having results on the ground for women and girls to be relevant and to really show results. And I think we've seen that, and we've also learned that today. And we also find it a collaborative effort, and we see partners from governments, from UN agencies. I think this is a unique, and very much in the UN reform also, a unique collaborative effort from the 4 UN agencies, and together with our implementing partners on the ground, civil society, and us as donors. I think it's the collaborative effort and the working together, which is also one of the reasons that we really wanted to join this program, and why we've sustained also our presence here. And it's not just the collaboration as such, it's also the fact that it is an integrated program. It is not just delivering on one outcome for women, education or food security or life skills. It's really integrating and taking advantage of all the various agencies, their strengths, pulling together resources and networks and reaching out to women on an individual level. And I think that's the sort of integrated way of working is what really makes a difference, and why we also can see those results that you are presenting. And I think as a program, I think also the fact that you are located in rural areas is very critical to us, because that's really where the needs are, and that's where the women and girls need our support as well. And I think that's basically one of a couple of the key reasons. We've also learned, it wasn't mentioned today, but we've also learned, I had a colleague, possibly if he's listening into this conversation today, I do need to mention his name, Mats Såberg, my colleague in Sida in Stockholm, who recently visited Ethiopia, in fact, and had very good reviews and reports from there. So we have visited the program in the field more than once since 2014. So we feel quite familiar and knowledgeable about what works. I also wanted to mention that we've continuously, I think, followed also the evaluations, and we have the one recently from Kyrgyzstan, which we've scrutinized and we've read with great interest. And I think also what's coming across today is that, yes, it's important to focus on women's empowerment and women's economic empowerment as one of the means to achieve gender equality and to really achieve poverty alleviation, because that's the two, I would say, of the ultimate goals. But it's also, we need to pay attention to women's unpaid care work and domestic work. I think that's really one of the barriers that sometimes goes unrecognized. And I was interested to learn also about, you mentioned it in Kyrgyzstan, for example, that the women, one of the lessons learned is that we shouldn't, we should pay attention to the fact that women's leisure time is being compromised. And I think what we need to also focus on is that angle. And I'm really happy to see that that's a very important dimension of the program, because we don't want to burden the women more, so to say. We want to alleviate the burden on women so they can be active participants and they can have an empowerment dimension. So I think this is something we certainly need to bear in mind always in the development work that we do, and find ways on how we can alleviate that burden. Engaging men and boys, I think it was mentioned also by our colleague from IFAd, engaging men in also taking a larger portion of the household work, and also other members of the family that you mentioned. So I think that approach is important. I just wanted to mention that as a key dimension. But I think overall, we've been very interested in following and learning from the program and the approach, the integrated way, the working together and adapting as you move along and you achieve the results. And I think I can also say that we are happy to share our experiences if there are other partners, private or public donors or others interested in learning also more what we think about the program, because we are happy to share our experiences. And we would also like to continue to supporting the program, and are planning also to have a one-year cost extension of the program to the amount of $4 million. And with this support, our total contribution over the years have been more than $20 million. And we think it's very well invested money, which we are really happy to contribute. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Eva. We are really so grateful about Sweden, because we know Sweden puts what its manual, its mouth is. You walk the talk. So that's really, really great, and we are very grateful for that. And now we are moving to our last panelist. And just because he's a man, it's not the reason we put him last. It's just... It's just by chance that he gets to speak last, but it's not because he's a man. And André comes from Norway, and Norway is our second donor for this project. Again, like Sweden, they have been with us over the years, and we really appreciate that. Maybe, André, you can start telling us why you think this program has got comparative advantages over the other programs which seek to do the same thing. So if you can just tell us a bit about that. And thank you so much for being here and for taking part in this, I don't know whether it's woman panel, since it's not a man panel, it's a woman panel. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. So thank you to the organizers and for the presentation so far. So I figure since it's Thursday and an early evening, I would start by just giving some thoughts on my week here, my first commission on the status of women. So I'm responsible for women's rights and gender equality in Norway's foreign and development policy. The reaction to that is sometimes, oh, how can you do that? To, great, you should be doing that. So I guess the verdict is sort of still out there. But for Norway, it's a policy that we can activate men on this issue. And I would have liked to see more men here this week. I heard someone say that next year we could have sort of an arrangement that if you come as a woman, you must bring a man. I'm not sure that is a good idea, but the purpose is great. We need more men to be engaged on gender equality, because this is not a women's issue. It's not a side show. It's definitely a main show. And I find that gender equality is often talked about some sort of handout to women, which is absolutely not. And in that sense, women are described as vulnerable. And at that point, I often feel that I have to stress that women are not vulnerable because they are women. They are vulnerable because of regulations, laws, and culture. And that is a very, very big difference. If you take away those restrictions, I am sure that the results will come running. We know they will come running. Women are probably one of the most potent forces for development that exist out there in society. But I'm also encouraged, because there are a lot of signs that it is moving from being a sideshow to becoming a main show, where it should be, because it is development policy, it's a human rights issue, and it's also a security policy issue. So, to the cause. The international community has agreed on a roadmap to the future we want, and one that will leave no one behind. And the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development is a plan of action for people. The 17 SDGs are part of a holistic sustainable development agenda. And we need to cultivate the synergies between these goals. And one good example is the well-documented synergy between food security and gender equality. A food secure world requires gender equality and women's empowerment. And women are central to the development of rural areas, as well as to national economies. Women account for a significant portion of the agricultural labor force, play a key role in food production, and perform most of the unpaid care work. Of those women in the least developed countries who report being economically active, 79% report agriculture as their primary source of livelihood, stressing the importance of this particular issue. Women's empowerment is a key means of achieving gender equality. It involves women having the same capacity as men to determine and shape their own lives and contribute in shaping the lives of their families, communities, and societies. And specifically, on your question, it's very easy to talk about why this program is particularly good. First of all, women's leadership and participation is indeed necessary to achieve the transformational change needed for sustainable development. We therefore early on supported UN Women, FAO, IFAd, and World Food Programme promotion of a comprehensive UN system response in support of the economic empowerment of rural women and girls through joint actions. This joint program shows how the UN can work together more effectively and be delivering as one. And an effective and a coordinated UN is a top priority for Norway. We believe that the 4 agencies are benefiting from drawing on the experiences gained by others, just like a group of experts coming together. So, to end, Norway strongly believes that gender equality is a prerequisite for food security and for women, men, girls, and boys to be able to exercise their human rights, including the right to adequate food. Promoting women as entrepreneurs is crucial for achieving these rights. Norway will continue to support the program, and we look forward to our meetings in early May in Rome, where we will decide on the way forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I actually double thank you, because you actually kept to what you told me about the time you are going to take. You just took that time. And I really thank you for that. So it's my privilege to give a 2-minute intervention to Mona Lockham, who is founder and chairperson of Food for Humanity Foundation from Yemen, to just say a few words to us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sure, can you hear me? Okay. So, Excellencies and distinguished guests and panelists, I'm glad to be here today, a survivor of this deadly war in Yemen. Hearing all of these inspiring stories have really moved me greatly. In 2015, I initiated an initiative. It was towards food security in Yemen. We were trying to save lives, which is a very difficult thing because we were ourselves trapped in the crossfire between all the warring parties. We started to divert the youth from they were mobilized to be in militant groups, and we were trying to pull them back together in the name of humanity, and that's where the name came. After a while, we just realized that livelihoods is the only way, and women empowerment will be the only way to really build peace for Yemen bottom up, because it's not going to come from outside, it's going to come from inside. It can only be when it is inclusive of the women, especially who are leading many projects in Yemen. And of course, I have a 2-minute limit, so it's very difficult to speak about everything, but I would like to share a story that I initiated last year. We heard about an area in Taz. It's a mountainous area with very difficult terrain. Women had to travel between 2 to 8 hours to fetch water, at many times being hit by a landmine or being harassed. And this was very difficult for me to hear and disturbing. And I did not really have the funds to help them at that time. So what I did is I sent some engineers there to evaluate what the situation is and how we can help them bring water for these villages and assist them. What we did is that we were able to rebuild a water station, but what happened was this area had an armed conflict for nearly 2 years. And so we had to mediate. I actually had to mediate with the tribal leaders there to resolve the issue. And so we gave them an incentive with the water station. And we managed to get a truce there, and now they are in peace. And the water station is benefiting more than 10,000 people in 9 villages there. The next step that we're trying to work on is that we're trying to advocate and create awareness for child marriage in the same area, and women empowerment, and also agricultural activities. And this is something that I can share more with those who are interested. And today, especially, like I said, I'm very inspired because now I know that the vision that I had at that time, I was on the right track. Thank you so much. I'll tell you how many minutes you took. Thank you so much. We are now going to move on to questions. And I would encourage you just to use it in question format so we can take as many questions as we can. And I wondered whether the Vice Prime Minister would like to say something before we move to the questions. You okay? Okay, so the floor is now open to questions. Can you find out who? Maybe we take a couple.
Okay. Yes, hello. I'm John Coonrod with the Hunger Project, and I had a question about the pro-WIA. And it is, a lot of policy is riding on the WIA, and yet, as you've shown, and I've also seen in work we've done, the discrepancy between the qualitative and the quantitative numbers. And in a lot of people-centered activity, I've seen this. And do you have any insights into how we could fix the quantitative data or the questions that are being asked so that there isn't this discrepancy between people's sort of lived experience and the numbers? Okay.
Good afternoon, and thank you very much for the sharing of information. My name is Gia Gaspard Taylor. I'm from Trinidad and Tobago and president of the Network of Rural Women Producers. And my question is, why is it that all of these opportunities are not open to the English-speaking Caribbean? Why are we not benefiting from these things as rural women?
Okay. So, okay, we'll start with two. Shall I give over the floor to Susan to start, and then another panelist who wants to answer the question from Trinidad?
Thank you very much. When the WIA first started, the first times it was in use, actually it did not have a qualitative model. It was just a quantitative. And it was very clear to us that we needed the qualitative to inform the questions and vice versa. Because also you need the qualitative sometimes to make sense of the numbers. So the trick has always been, how do you make sure they build on each other? But also, I think the discrepancy is not necessarily bad because numbers don't explain everything. So it's really, what's been important for us is to push that the number crunchers recognize the qualitative as a very good way of collecting information and validating that. And I think more and more, as we have the meetings of the two qualitative, quantitative, I see it amongst the developers that they are recognizing the power of the qualitative. So it's a process. But I think it's really important that to have both of them and not to have just one of them. Thanks.
Do you want to make anybody can make an intervention about the question about Caribbean?
Maybe I can say a few words. No, thanks. I'm the global coordinator of the joint program. My name is Azzurra Chiarini. Actually, we have received a lot of similar requests to join this partnership. The reality is that we have to be strategic about, the resources that we were able to mobilize, and unfortunately, despite the generous contribution of Sweden and Norway, we don't have enough money yet to scale up this program to other countries, but what we are doing right now is to really focus on knowledge management, knowledge generation, evaluation, systematizing information so that we can create a model of joint program on a holistic approach, integrated approach to rural women's economic empowerment so that it can be used and implemented also in other countries. So we'll make sure we'll let you know when this comes up. Thank you.
Thank you very much for really a wonderful and inspiring set of presentations. I'm Yasmin Argas. I direct the program on gender and public policy at Columbia University here in New York. And I have a question which has to do with the unintended consequences of programs of empowerment. I was very struck by the fact that it seems like there's a plateau in, for example, control of resources, after which, in fact, women may not only not have, I wasn't quite clear whether it was that women may not only no longer not have access to greater resources, or may actually, in fact, be in danger of losing the resources that they have when there's an expansion past a certain level. And so obviously the right solution is not to draw back, but I'm wondering two things. One is whether in the analyses that you've done, you've also thought about mapping unintended consequences, because I think that there are probably a lot of lessons that can be learned and shared from that. And second is, in addressing these unintended consequences, specifically with respect, for example, to the problem of resources right now, I think the suggestion was that there needs to be negotiation in households, which I completely understand and agree with. But I wonder whether there are ways to support those negotiations so that the outcomes are favorable to women? In other words, what is the approach for dealing with these issues? Thank you.
Take another question. Okay, go ahead, please.
Thank you so much for the inspiring examples and showcase. My name is Birjan Ömer, and I represent the Late Millennium Organization, and we are associated with the Department of Global Communications. I have actually a general question which applies to anyone who likes to pick it up. I have not heard, and I must say, I'm sorry, I missed the keynote speaker because I was coming from another event. I apologize for that. Maybe it was something there. If I miss, I apologize. But I have not heard so far. It is a big, huge issue, global issue, seed monopoly and GMOs. And when we are talking about food security, when we are talking about nutrition, and when we are talking empowering women, household, these are really dream-like programs. But at the same time, when on the global level and country in all levels, 65% more than already world seeds are monopolized. So how does it play in all this spectrum? Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. I'll pass over to the panel. First, IFAd. And if you can also be very quick with your answers back. Thank you.
Thank you. I will address the question of unintended consequences and then support within the household. So the Gender Action Learning System, it's truly an approach that includes different steps. One is, of course, it's not implemented in a vacuum. So there are some facilitators that are identified within the communities that are trained. And then there are a number of tools that are used to actually work in collaboration with the households. So in terms of the tools, so we are referring commonly to 7 different tools. The first one being the vision, where the facilitators work with every single member of the household to actually help them crystallize, first of all, to identify and then crystallize that vision. And then for those who don't know how to write it, we just draw it. And then there are different tools such as the gender tree, where you have the woman talking about her own priorities, the men will talk about his priorities, and then both of them talk about the challenges in actually meeting those priorities. And so it's another conversation to go and then to address some unintended consequences. And it's important what you mentioned because, as we were saying earlier, one, some of the unintended consequences could be the loss of assets or even, some violence happening in the household. And so those difficult conversations do take place within the household. And then the household methodology is a flexible tool, so it can also go outside of the households, where the religious leaders and other members of the community are also brought into the conversation. The same approach can be used into some farmer-based organizations. So it's a very flexible tool, but the idea is to have a facilitator that brings up those difficult issues. I'll say something very quick about the monopoly on seeds and so on.
As FAO is organization in charge of the agricultural input. So, as we mentioned in the presentation, that the successful outputs of this program, they are based on the comparative advantages of each agencies which contribute to the implementation of this program. And regarding the seeds, like FAO, we're providing the agricultural trainings and inputs and new agronomic innovations. And as a technical organization, FAO, we are very strict in selecting what agronomical inputs we are providing to the beneficiaries. And in terms of seeds, fertilizers, or any other inputs, we always have our technical offices in the headquarters who check all the specifications. We can't buy at none of the country offices can buy whatever seeds or other inputs without technical clearance from the headquarters or regional offices, technical offices. So they have their own rules and procedures, and we check all this. As our beneficiaries in one of those, during the evaluation, they said, the voices from the field said that they need these agronomical trainings. Even the neighbors, when they learned about the benefits of the programs, they all wanted to get, because they get income. And now we see that the beneficiaries of our programs, they can scale up themselves, providing the trainings. Because the problem why they were like poor, or they've been doing agriculture themselves anyway for many years, but they didn't know how to buy which seeds, quality seeds to buy, fertilizers and so on. And we provided these trainings, and as a technical organization, we ensure the proper level and quality of the agricultural inputs. Thank you.
Thank you. So just a few comments on the unintended. I don't know about the unintended consequences in the area that you spoke of specifically, but we have experiences in Norway as well that there are consequences that come from achieving gender equality. For example, nowadays we need to work on boys in school, which are lagging behind girls significantly. We have more female doctors, and so that is an issue that we are dealing with. Girls are just doing better. We just speak for the potential that are within girls and women, right? And also there is a disparity in the job market. It isn't necessarily something that we have to fix, but there are more women working in the public sector, more men in the private sector, even though we have almost as many women as men employed in total. I have also heard, I'm not sure if this is scientifically true, but I've also heard that there are signs of more violence against women when they are empowered, which maybe speaks to the power struggle that comes from power shifting. But I mean, these are consequences that we need to talk about. We need to deal with them at the same time as we go full steam ahead on gender equality.
Short, and then Eva.
I also wanted to mention that in terms of what we found, that women were losing control, or they had control over small amounts of money. Part of doing this is to also understand what else the project needs to do. And this pointed that there was a problem, and the project needs to actually have interventions to have this conversation with the community members. And so they may be using girls in Kyrgyzstan. They use community conversations in Ethiopia to have these conversations. In Niger, we have Dimitra clubs, which are again spaces that allow communities to discuss difficult questions. And very briefly on I just wanted to mention also in terms of GMOs that FAO also promotes agroecology, and we've been pushing the agenda quite a lot. We are pushing the agenda around recognizing indigenous knowledge, traditional crops. So this is a very comfortable conversation within FAO, and that is really advanced. And of course, strengthening community organizations so that they understand and have the knowledge, as Dinara said. Thank you. Sorry, Kawinzi.
I'll make a very, very short comment. I think the question also on unintended consequences is very relevant for, I think, all development and humanitarian assistance. I just wanted to compare to another session I was in a panel on the other day, actually yesterday, on cash transfers and intimate partner violence. That was a research-oriented. Sweden is also supporting that research being done by Innocenti and others. It was UN Women and UNICEF that was co-hosting it. Just to give a parallel, because we do assume always that violence increases, and it could happen, but in terms of women's empowerment. But actually, the research results coming out of those studies that were made didn't really point to any clear evidence as regards intimate partner violence increased due to cash transfers, for example, for women. So I thought that was quite interesting. So I think we need to challenge also our assumptions and invest also more in research and finding out really, because there are certainly situations where it can happen, but we need to learn more about what works and what those situations are. And also on the, for example, on the frequency and number of incidents, there's a lot we need to do more research about in terms of intimate partner violence, which usually happens in a family. I mean, or in unintended consequences in general. So I think we don't necessarily have to say that this program needs to do the research, but I mean, I think it's welcome that you gather that information and you have those sort of eyes and ears also when you're doing the program monitoring to include those questions in your surveys. So thank you very much, and sorry for taking too much time for commenting.
Okay, I'll pick up on that very quickly to say yes, indeed. I think research is very much welcomed, but not to underestimate also the learning that comes from practical application of research and how the approaches to gender equality and women's empowerment have been evolving over time. And really, it is through learning like this that we get to refine what we're doing. And I just wanted to link that onto two things, of the importance of documentation and also measurement as critical, not only to programmatic work, but also as we move forward in terms of looking at what kind of progress are we making and for whom, so that, you know, it's not all women are equal, not all rural women are equal either. And to just on the comment related to issues that are evolving that are maybe much broader than the scope of a program but have huge implications, I think that to recommend that these issues do get discussed in the build-up now to Beijing Plus 25. You know, it's important to look at the 12 areas of concern that were discussed in Beijing. This is an important benchmark, but a lot has happened in the last 25 years. And I think a lot has happened for in the area of rural development that we need to take into consideration. But just to encourage that this discussion has to continue and to bring these issues to the table. Thank you very much.
I just want to say now we have seen how this project really changes people's lives, not only one life but many lives, lives of the parents and the children, and the World Food Program is very proud to be part of this program, and all the other partners are also very proud to be part of this program. And we really thank you so much for coming and for staying with us up to this time. And also I thank, because I have seen some of you are repeat comers who have been coming to this event, so it's really nice to have you back. And if you can join me in saying thank you to the great panel. Thank you so much, and we'll see you again next year. Spread the word. Thank you.
Sonia, because you have to be escorted out through a specific exit. So please, people who don't have a UN pass, follow Sonia.
Well done, my dear. Another successful event. Well done. Yeah.